Welcome to this fifth clip. In the last clip we read Genesis chapter 2 and we ended at chapter 2 verse 24. We left 225 because in my view 225 is the beginning of the second half of that story that runs in chapter 2 and 3. It reads like this: the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Now, in the Bible, when we think of nakedness, we think right away of sexuality. In the Bible, it's not the case. The nakedness is related to poverty and to one's own limitations. And that's exactly. So they had limitations one in front of the other, but they were not ashamed of their limitations. If you're a teenager, you understand what I'm meaning, because usually we're never happy with what we are, and we try to hide our limitations from one another. And now another actor, or another character comes in the story. It's the snake, or the serpent. And we are told that the serpent was more crafty than any other of the animals. Now there's a play on word in Hebrew. The craftier is the more arum. And arum is the same word as naked. So he was crafty, but he was more naked than anybody else. If you've seen a snake before, you know that it's very naked. That's not having anything to cover itself. So the snake, just as in Harry Potter, speaks. And he speaks to the woman. And what does he say to her? He says, "So did God say, you shall not eat from every tree in the garden?" Now the question is, was he right? Yes or not? Of course, God said you can eat from every tree except one. Which means as soon as you forbid someone to eat one of every tree, they cannot eat every tree. So the snake is telling the truth, but he's reversing the proportion so that it looks like they cannot eat from every tree. And then the woman, who wasn't there, by the way, she was in the rib at that time when God spoke, but she knows exactly what went on between God and the Adam. She says, no, we can eat from every tree, except that tree of knowledge of good and evil, we cannot touch it because God didn't say anything about touching it, but she said, we cannot eat it, we cannot touch it, because on that day we will die. And the serpent says, no, you will not die, because God knows that on the day you will eat from it, you will become like Him, like God. And this is the temptation. To know good and evil is to know everything. And the only person in the whole world that can know everything is God Himself. So the temptation is to know everything, to become like God. And that's exactly what they are going to do. Okay? So what happened? And it's important to read it. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, it was a delight for the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruits and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Now this is very important, because usually when I heard very beautiful sermons on which poor man was the victim of Eve, the woman. Well, here it says that he was with her. So they were accomplices. He could have said no, but in the story he didn't say no. They both committed the sin. They are both guilty. It's not the temptress that is playing on the poor Adam, who was the first victim of a woman in the human history. Nothing like that. Okay? And what happened then? The eyes of both were opened. Maybe the snake was right, but let's read the rest. They knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. Okay, so they opened their eyes, but instead of knowing everything, they felt their nakedness as a real limitation. And what did they try to do? They tried to hide from one another. But this will not work with God. This is what we shall see in the next clip. See you in a while.